The flashlight trembled in her hands. Behind the false wall, 6 mannequins stood in darkness, each one wearing a beautiful vintage gown, each one with a photograph pinned beside it. Young women, smiling, gone. The name tag on the first dress read, Margaret Chen, 1962, never came home. Nina Castillo had spent her last $8,500 on this vintage store, desperate to save her daughter from eviction. She thought she was buying a second chance. Instead, she'd inherited a graveyard of secrets. And someone was watching. The flashlight beam cut through decades of dust. Nina Castillo's hands shook as she pulled the false wall panel away from the rack of 1,950 dresses. The wood groaned, reluctant to give up secrets it had kept for so long. 2 a.m, 3 days since she'd bought this place with her last $8,500. 3 days of cleaning, hoping, praying this wasn't the mistake everyone said it was. Behind the panel wasn't storage. It was a room. A hidden room that smelled of old perfume and something else. Something that made her skin crawl. Mannequins stood in the darkness like silent witnesses. 6 of them, maybe 7, each wearing an exquisite vintage gown, silk that caught her flashlight like trapped moonlight. Beading that glittered like tears. But it was what hung beside each mannequin that made Nina's breath stop. Photographs, black and white, pinned carefully to small cards. Young women, smiling, beautiful, alive. She stepped closer, her sneakers silent on the dusty floor. The first name tag read in careful script, Margaret Chen, 1962, never came home. Nina's stomach dropped. This morning felt like a lifetime ago. Sophia at breakfast, her daughter's worried eyes. Mom, are we going to be okay? Nina had smiled, hiding the eviction notice in her pocket. We're going to be better than okay, baby. Now she stood in this forgotten room, surrounded by ghosts in silk. She counted them. 6 mannequins, 6 photographs, 6 women who never came home. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, impossibly loud in the silence. Unknown number. The message made her blood turn to ice. You shouldn't have opened that door. Some stories are meant to stay buried. Nina spun around. The store was empty. The front door still locked from the inside, deadbolt exactly where she'd left it. She was alone. Except she wasn't. Someone was watching. Someone knew she was here. She looked back at the hidden room, at the faces of women frozen in time, and understood with terrible clarity. She hadn't just bought a vintage clothing store. She'd inherited a graveyard of secrets someone would kill to keep hidden. Nina didn't sleep that night. She sat in her car outside the store until sunrise, watching the windows, waiting for movement that never came. The threatening text burned in her mind like a brand. When morning finally broke, she drove straight to Sophia's school, watched her daughter walk through the gates with her worn backpack and second-hand sneakers, safe, for now. Nina Castillo, 36 years old, single mother, former fashion design student who dropped out at 19 when the pregnancy test came back positive. That was 17 years ago, felt like yesterday. She'd been rebuilding ever since her ex-husband left 4 years ago, taking their savings and disappearing like smoke. No forwarding address, no child support, just gone. 3 years of working as a seamstress at Martinez Dry Cleaners, saving every spare dollar, skipping meals so Sophia could eat, wearing the same 3 outfits on rotation while her daughter got new things. All for this, for Margot's vintage boutique, $8,500, everything she had. The store sat on a beautiful corner in the historic district, a 1,940 building with Art Deco windows and original hardwood floors. It had been closed for 15 years after the owner, Margot Delacroix, died with no heirs. Nina got it cheap at auction because locals whispered it was cursed. She'd laughed at that. Desperate people couldn't afford superstition. The plan was simple: clean and restore for 3 months while keeping her day job, reopen by summer, build something sustainable, give Sophia stability for the first time in her life. Beautiful things deserve second chances, Nina always said. She'd applied that philosophy to vintage dresses, forgotten furniture, broken relationships. Now she wasn't sure what she'd given a second chance to. Her phone rang. Her co-worker, Denise. "Girl, you okay? You look like death." Nina was back at the dry cleaners, hands moving automatically through alterations. She hadn't told anyone about last night. About the hidden room or the text message. "Just tired," she said. "The store's bigger project than I thought." Denise lowered her voice. "I told you that place has a reputation. My aunt worked there in the 70s. Said Margot was strange, kept to herself, would close the shop for weeks without explanation." "Strange how?" "Obsessed with her customers, would ask personal questions, keep records of everything. My aunt said it felt like Margot was collecting people's stories." Nina's hands stilled on the dress she was hemming. Collecting stories, or collecting something else. That afternoon, she returned to the store with fresh eyes. The main room was beautiful racks of authentic vintage clothing from 5 decades, organized by era. Each piece tagged in elegant handwriting with dates and cryptic notes. Sarah's wedding dress, 1958, she never wore it. Bought from estate sale, owner disappeared 1965. Nina's skin prickled. She'd seen these tags before but hadn't really read them. How many of these clothes had belonged to women who disappeared? She thought about the hidden room. 6 mannequins, 6 photographs, 6 women who never came home. The front door chimed. Nina spun around, heart hammering. An elderly man stood in the doorway, silver hair, kind eyes, wearing a cardigan that had seen better days. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Marcus Webb. I heard someone finally bought Margot's place." He looked around the store with something like sadness. "I was Margot's friend. Well, one of the few she had." He paused. "I came to see if the new owner might need help understanding what they've inherited." The way he said inherited made Nina's blood run cold. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. Marcus's expression was grave. Margot Delacroix spent her entire life protecting secrets that powerful people wanted buried. "If you've found what I think you've found, you're in danger." He pulled out a business card, pressed it into her hand. "When you're ready to know the truth, call me, but be careful." Margot learned too late that some truths have teeth. He left before Nina could ask what he meant. She stood alone in the beautiful store, surrounded by vintage dresses and hidden histories, and wondered what she'd really bought with her last $8,500. A second chance at life? Or a death sentence? Nina decided not to call Marcus Webb. Not yet. Maybe he was paranoid. Maybe Margot had been paranoid too. Small towns bred gossip, and abandoned buildings bred ghost stories. She had 60 days until eviction. That's what the notice said. 60 days to make the store profitable or lose her apartment. She couldn't afford paranoia. So she cleaned. Day 1, the main floor. Decades of dust came up in clouds that made her cough, but underneath, hardwood floors gleamed. Original tin ceiling tiles caught the afternoon light like water. Sophia came after school, backpack heavy with homework she'd do later. "Mom, look!" She spun in a circle, arms out, a 1,960 seconds cocktail dress swirling around her thin frame. The price tag said $200, but to Sophia it was a costume, a portal to another time. Nina's heart ached. Her daughter was 10 but already understood they couldn't afford dreams. "You look beautiful, baby." Sophia's smile could light rooms. "Can we really make this work?" We have to, Nina said. Not we will, we have to. The difference mattered. That night, Nina stayed late, hand sewing a tear in a vintage gown. Her fingers remembered the skills from design school, the education she'd abandoned when Sophia was born. The store felt different after dark, heavier, like the building itself was holding its breath. She tried not to think about the hidden room, about the 6 mannequins with their silent accusations. Never came home. What did that mean? Day 2, inventory. Nina photographed every piece, creating an online catalogue. The work was meticulous, soothing. Each dress had a story, according to Margot's tags. Blue silk evening gown, 1963, belonged to Rose Martinez, bought from sister after Rose moved away. Moved away. Nina wrote it down, tried not to wonder if Rose had really moved, or if she was one of the 6. She found more disturbing tags as she worked. Wedding dress, never worn, 1967. Catherine said she'd rather die than marry him. Black cocktail dress, 1958. Diana loved this one. I hope she's safe wherever she went. I hope she's safe. The words made Nina's skin crawl. Her phone rang. Denise. You coming to work tomorrow? Nina had taken 3 days off, using vacation time she didn't really have. Yeah, back on Monday. Good, because Mr. Reyes is asking about you, says you're his favorite seamstress. Nina smiled, despite herself. Small victories. Tell him I miss his impossible alterations. After hanging up, she pulled out the eviction notice, looked at it for the first time. The landlord's name, Whitmore Property Management. She'd never thought about it before. Now something nagged at her memory. Had she seen that name somewhere else? Day 3. The window displays. Nina arranged mannequins in the front windows, dressing them in the most stunning pieces. A 1952 cocktail dress in emerald green. A 1942 suit with impeccable tailoring. People stopped to look. An older woman pressed her face against the glass, tears streaming down her cheeks. Nina went outside. Are you okay? The woman pointed at the emerald dress. My sister had one just like that. She disappeared in 1962. They never found her. Nina's blood turned cold. I'm so sorry. Margaret Chen, that was her name. The woman wiped her eyes. Probably sounds crazy, but I've spent 60 years wondering what happened to her. Margaret Chen. The name from the hidden room. First mannequin, first photograph. Nina didn't know what to say. The woman left before she could figure it out. Nina stood on the sidewalk, hands shaking. This wasn't paranoia. This was real. She went back inside, straight to Margot's desk, started going through drawers she hadn't opened yet. Files. So many files. Each one labelled with a woman's name. Margaret Chen, Rose Martinez, Diana Volkov, Catherine Blackwood. Inside each file, newspaper clippings, missing persons reports, police statements, handwritten notes in Margot's elegant script. Police say she ran away, but Rose would never leave her daughter. Diana's apartment was cleaned out. Someone did that after she vanished. Catherine's fiancé says she left him, but her friends say he was violent. Nina's hands trembled as she read. Margot hadn't just collected dresses. She'd been investigating for decades. A knock at the door made her jump. Marcus Webb stood outside, rain dripping from his silver hair. I saw the light on, he said when she opened the door. I wanted to check if you were okay. Why wouldn't I be? He looked at the files spread across the desk. His expression went grim. You found them. Found what? Old paperwork? Evidence. Marcus stepped inside, closed the door behind him. Margot spent 40 years documenting women who disappeared from this town. Women no one else bothered to remember. Why? Because she believed someone was hunting them, someone local, someone powerful enough that the police wouldn't listen. Nina thought about the threatening text. You shouldn't have opened that door. Did she ever prove it? Marcus shook his head. She tried. God, she tried. But every time she got close, something would happen. Evidence would vanish. Witnesses would recant. She'd receive threats. What kind of threats? The kind that made her install that hidden room. The kind that made her seal it up and pretend it didn't exist. He paused, until someone was brave enough to look. Nina sat down hard. I'm not brave, I'm desperate. There's a difference. Sometimes they're the same thing. She looked at the files, at Margot's meticulous notes, years of work, decades of refusing to forget. Who did she think was responsible? Marcus's jaw tightened. A man named Theodore Whitmore. He died in 2010, but his son, Graham, still lives here. Whitmore. The name on her eviction notice. Graham Whitmore is my landlord, Nina whispered. Marcus's face went pale. You need to be very careful. If Graham knows you found this, he already knows. Someone sent me a text the night I opened the hidden room. Then you need to stop, right now. Walk away. I can't. Nina gestured at the store, at everything she'd invested. This is all I have. If I lose this, Sophia and I have nowhere to go. If you keep investigating, you might not be alive to worry about it. The words hung between them like smoke. Finally, Marcus sighed. Then at least let me help. Margot was my aunt. She tried to warn me about all this years ago, but I didn't believe her. I thought she was paranoid, obsessed. What changed your mind? She died 3 days after telling me she'd found proof. The police said it was natural causes, but Margot was healthy, strong. His voice cracked. I think someone killed her to keep her quiet. Nina's throat went tight. She thought about Sophia, about the eviction notice, about 60 days until homelessness. Then she thought about Margaret Chen's sister, crying on the sidewalk. About 6 women whose families never knew what happened to them. Okay, she said finally. Help me understand what Margot found. But carefully. I can't put Sophia at risk. Marcus nodded. First thing, we need to figure out if Graham Whitmore knows you found the hidden room, or if he's just suspicious. How do we do that? We make him think you're not interested, that you're just here to run a boutique, nothing more. Nina looked at the files spread across the desk, at the photographs of young women who'd trusted the wrong person. She thought about her philosophy. Beautiful things deserve second chances. These women deserved more than that. They deserved the truth, even if finding it destroyed everything Nina had left. She started to close the files, to hide them away, when something fell from Margaret Chen's folder. A key. Small, brass, old-fashioned. Taped to it, a note in Margot's handwriting, locked in memory, hidden in plain sight. The truth is, in the details. Nina turned the key over in her palm. It didn't match any lock in the store that she'd seen. What is it? Marcus asked. I don't know, Nina said slowly, but Margot wanted someone to find it. She looked at the hidden room's door, still ajar from that first night. Then at the racks of vintage clothing, each piece tagged with a fragment of a forgotten story. Somewhere in this store, Margot had hidden something more than photographs and newspaper clippings. She'd hidden proof. And this key was the first clue to finding it. Nina tried the key on everything. The antique cash register, the filing cabinets, the desk drawers, the display cases. Nothing fit. Maybe it's not for something in the store, Marcus suggested. They were working after hours, Sophia safely at a friend's house for a sleepover. Then where? He shrugged. Margot was careful, paranoid even. If she hid proof somewhere, it would be secure. A safety deposit box, a storage unit. Nina turned the key over in her palm. No markings, no numbers. just old brass worn smooth by decades of handling. The truth is in the details, she read from Margot's note again. What details? Marcus looked at the hidden room, at the 6 mannequins standing silent in their beautiful gowns. Maybe we're thinking too literally, he said. They entered the memorial room together. Nina had avoided it since that first night. The photograph still made her throat tight. Margaret Chen, smiling, young, alive, never came home. Marcus examined each dress carefully. These are museum quality. Margot preserved them perfectly. She loved beautiful things, Nina said softly. Then she remembered her own philosophy. Beautiful things deserve second chances. Had Margot believed that too? She ran her hand along Margaret Chen's dress. Blue silk, hand-beaded, probably worth thousands even now. Her seamstress eye caught something. A repair in the hem, recent stitching, different thread. Marcus, look. She knelt, examined the hem closely. The stitches were deliberate, precise, not a repair at all. Numbers. Stitched in nearly invisible thread, 42.3, 154, negative 122.8758. GPS coordinates, Marcus breathed. Nina's hands shook as she checked the other dresses. Each one had coordinates hidden in the hems, seams, or underlining. Each set of numbers carefully preserved in thread. She found them, Nina whispered. Margot found where they were buried. 6 dresses, 6 sets of coordinates, 6 graves. Marcus pulled out his phone, typed in the first coordinates. A location appeared. Remote woodland, 20 miles outside town. We need to go to the police, Nina said. With what? Coordinates stitched into vintage dresses. Graham Whitmore's lawyers will call it fabrication. Then, what do? We verify. One location. If there's something there remains, evidence, then we go to the police with proof they can't ignore. Nina thought about Sophia, about the threatening text, about Graham Whitmore, who owned her home and wanted this store gone. It's too dangerous. Living in ignorance is more dangerous. These women deserve to be found. Margot died trying to give them that. Nina closed her eyes, saw Margaret Chen's sister crying on the sidewalk. 60 years of wondering. One location, she said finally. We verify one, then we get professionals involved. They chose Margaret Chen's coordinates. The closest one, accessible by car. The next morning, Nina sent Sophia to school like normal, told her boss she had a personal emergency, met Marcus at the store at 9. I mapped it, he said. Old logging road, private property, but it's been abandoned for years. Whose property? Marcus's expression was grim. Used to belong to Theodore Whitmore. He sold it in 1985, but the new owners never developed it. Of course. They drove in silence, Nina's anxiety building with every mile. What if they were wrong? What if this was just Margot's paranoid fantasy? But the coordinates were so specific, so carefully hidden. The logging road was overgrown, barely passable. Marcus's truck scraped through underbrush until they reached the coordinates. A small clearing, trees pressing close, nothing obviously disturbed. Now what? Nina asked. Marcus had brought a metal detector. Now we look. 20 minutes of searching. Nina was ready to give up, relief and disappointment mixing, when the detector screamed. They dug. Not deep. 3 feet down, the shovel hit something that wasn't rock. Fabric. Nina's stomach turned. She recognized it immediately. The same blue silk as Margaret Chen's dress in the hidden room. But this fabric was buried with bones. Marcus called 911 with shaking hands. The police arrived within an hour. Detective Sarah Harris took their statement, her expression unreadable. You found this how? Nina told a version of the truth. researching missing persons cases from the 1960 seconds followed old information Margot had left. She didn't mention the dresses, not yet, not until she understood who she could trust. The forensics team worked for hours. Nina and Marcus waited in the truck, silent. Finally, Detective Harris returned. "We've recovered human remains. Female, approximate age 20 to 30, buried approximately 60 years ago. We'll need time for identification, but..." She paused. "This is a homicide investigation now." Nina's relief was overwhelming. They'd found her. Margaret Chen could finally go home. But Harris wasn't finished. "I need you both to stay available for questioning. And Miss Castillo, be careful. If someone buried this woman, and if they're still alive, they won't be happy she's been found." The drive back was surreal. Nina's phone buzzed constantly. Text messages from unknown numbers. "You're making a mistake. Stop digging. Think about your daughter." The last one made her pull over, hands shaking too hard to drive. Marcus read it, his face going pale. "They know about Sophia. We're going to the police, right now." But when they arrived at the station, Detective Harris had news that changed everything. "We ran the property records for where you found the remains. Interesting detail. That land was donated to the county in 1985 by Theodore Whitmore's company, for a nature preserve that was never built. So Graham Whitmore sits on the county preservation board. He's had access to that land for decades, and according to our records, he's visited that exact area multiple times in recent years." "Why would he visit his father's old burial site?" Nina asked. "Maybe to make sure it stayed buried." Marcus leaned forward. "Are you saying Graham Whitmore has been protecting his father's crimes?" "I'm saying we're investigating all possibilities. In the meantime, Miss Castillo, I strongly suggest you stop researching this case. For your own safety." Nina wanted to agree, wanted to take Sophia and run far away from this cursed town and its buried secrets. But she thought about the 5 other dresses in the hidden room. 5 other women, still waiting to be found. That night, she couldn't sleep. She returned to the store at 2 a.m., the same time she'd first discovered the hidden room. Sophia was at Denise's house, safe, for now. Nina stood in the memorial room, looking at the remaining 5 mannequins. Rose Martinez, Diana Volkov, Catherine Blackwood, 2 others whose names she was still learning. "I'll find you," she whispered to them. "All of you." She photographed each dress carefully, documenting the hidden coordinates. Then she did something that would either save her or destroy her. She called the one person who might understand. Margaret Chen's sister answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello? This is Nina Castillo from the vintage store. I found your sister." Silence, then sobbing. "Where? How?" Nina told her everything. The hidden room, Margot's investigation, the coordinates, the remains. "The police will contact you for identification, but I wanted you to know first. She's coming home." More crying. Then, "Thank you, God, thank you. We thought we'd never know. There are 5 others, 5 more women who need to come home. But I'm being threatened. I don't know if I can." "You have to." The woman's voice turned fierce. "My sister spent 60 years in an unmarked grave because no one would believe she mattered. Those other women matter too. Their families deserve answers." After hanging up, Nina sat in the dark store, surrounded by beautiful things that had witnessed ugly truths. Her phone buzzed, another unknown number. But this message was different. A photograph. Sophia, taken that afternoon, walking out of school, a red circle drawn around her in the image. The caption, "Last warning, sell the store, leave town, or your daughter joins the collection." Nina's world stopped. She looked at the mannequins in the hidden room, at the women who'd been someone's daughters too. Then she made a choice. She opened her laptop and started writing. Everything, every detail Margot had documented, every coordinate, every piece of evidence. She uploaded it to the cloud, set it to auto-send to Detective Harris, Marcus, and 3 journalists if she didn't check in every 24 hours. If they wanted her silent, they'd have to let her daughter live. And if they touched Sophia, the world would know everything. She was done being careful. It was time to finish what Margot started. Even if it killed her, the first body changed everything. Within hours, the news spread. Human remains found in local woodland investigation ongoing. Nina's phone exploded with calls. Reporters, true crime podcasters, people offering money for interviews. She ignored them all. But she couldn't ignore Graham Whitmore's lawyer. The letter arrived by courier. Cease and desist. Defamation, harassment, legal action for trespassing on Whitmore property. They're trying to scare you, Marcus said. They were succeeding. Nina sat in the store, surrounded by vintage dresses that suddenly felt like evidence in a trial she didn't understand how to win. Detective Harris called. We need you to come in. Graham Whitmore has filed a formal complaint. At the station, Harris looked exhausted. He's claiming you've been harassing him, making false accusations, trespassing on family property. I found a body. On property his father sold 40 years ago. Graham says he had no knowledge of what his father did. Says he's as horrified as anyone. Nina's stomach dropped. You believe him? Harris sighed. I believe we need more than one body and some old dress coordinates to prove a living person committed a crime. Graham was a child when most of these women disappeared. But the threats? We traced them. Burner phones, bought with cash, no connection to Graham Whitmore. Could be anyone. Could be someone he hired. Prove it. Harris wasn't being cruel, just realistic. Right now, you have a serial killer who died 13 years ago and a son who claims complete ignorance. Unless we find evidence Graham knew about the murders while they were happening, or proof he's behind the threats, my hands are tied. Nina left the station, feeling hollow. Outside, a man in an expensive suit approached her. Miss Castillo, I'm James Brennan. I represent the Whitmore family estate. I have nothing to say to you. I think you'll want to hear this. He pulled out a check. Mr. Whitmore is willing to purchase your store for $300,000. Cash, no questions. You can relocate, start fresh, somewhere safe. Nina stared at the number. $300,000. More than she'd ever seen in her life. Enough to give Sophia everything she deserved. Why would he pay that much for a store I bought for $8,000? Brennan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Let's call it a goodwill gesture. The Whitmore family has been through enough scandal. Mr. Whitmore would prefer this entire situation to fade quietly. You mean he wants to demolish the store, erase the evidence? I mean, he's offering you a generous sum to move on with your life. Nina thought about Sophia, about the photo with the red circle, about sleeping at night knowing her daughter was safe. I'll think about it, she said. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, doing math. $300,000 could change everything. Sophia could have new clothes. A college fund. They could move somewhere no one knew them. Somewhere without buried bodies and threatening texts. She could finally stop fighting. But then she thought about Margaret Chen's sister, about the 60 years of not knowing, about the 5 other women still buried in unmarked graves, about Margot, who'd spent 40 years refusing to give up. Her phone rang at 2 a.m. Sophia, crying. Mom, someone followed me today. From school. A man in a black car. Nina's world stopped. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm at Aunt Maria's. She called the police. But Mom, I'm scared. I'm coming. Right now. Don't leave the house. Nina threw clothes in a bag, hands shaking so badly she could barely zip it. Marcus appeared at her door before she could leave. I heard. I'm driving you. The 6-hour drive to California passed in a blur of terror and guilt. What had she done? Why had she risked her daughter's safety for strangers who'd been dead for 60 years? At Maria's house, Sophia ran into her arms, sobbing. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Maria pulled Nina aside. The police said the car had stolen plates. They're treating it as a credible threat. "I'm taking the money," Nina said. "Whitmore's offer. I'm selling the store and we're disappearing." "Nina, my daughter matters more than justice for dead women. I can't let her become one of them." Maria nodded slowly. "I understand. But are you sure this is what you want?" Was she? Nina spent 3 days in California, barely leaving Sophia's side. She called Brennan, told him she'd accept the offer. "Excellent decision," he said. "Papers will be ready to sign when you return." But the night before she was supposed to drive back, Marcus called. "Nina, the police found something at the second burial site." Her heart sank. "What?" "Not just bones, personal effects. A ring engraved with initials, clothing fragments that match descriptions from missing persons reports. Detective Harris says this is bigger than we thought." "How much bigger?" "There might be more than 6. Margot's coordinates were just the ones she could verify. Theodore Whitmore's hunting ground was larger." Nina closed her eyes. "I can't, Marcus. I'm selling the store. I'm done." Long silence. Then, "I understand, but there's something else. One of the items they found. It's a journal." Theodore Whitmore's journal. He kept detailed records. Names, dates, locations. So, the police have everything they need. Not everything. The journal mentions Margot. Says he approached her in 1962, asked her to help him preserve his collection. She refused, reported him. He wrote that he should have killed her then, but decided to let her suffer instead, to spend her life knowing the truth and being unable to prove it. Nina's throat went tight. The journal also mentions Graham, says he was being groomed to appreciate the work, that his son would carry on the legacy. Graham knew. Graham helped, at least in the later years. The journal suggests Graham assisted with covering up the 1971 murder. He would have been 19. Nina thought about Margot, about 40 years of living with this knowledge, unable to speak it. About dying with the secret still buried. Where did they find the journal? In a safe deposit box, registered to Theodore Whitmore. Graham had access to it since his father died. He's known everything for 13 years. Nina's decision crystallized. She couldn't run. Not when Margot had spent her entire life standing still, fighting alone. "I'm not selling," she told Marcus. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." She told Sophia that night, told her everything. "Mom, those women, they had families who missed them?" "Yes." Sophia was quiet for a long time. Then, "Grandma says you have to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves, even if it's scary." Nina pulled her daughter close. "Grandma was right. But you're staying here with Aunt Maria until this is over. I can't do this if I'm worried about you. Promise you'll be careful?" "I promise." It was a lie. What she was about to do wasn't careful at all. Nina drove back alone, 12 hours to think about her choices. When she arrived at the store, police cars surrounded it. Detective Harris met her at the door. "Someone broke in last night, destroyed the hidden room, smashed the mannequins, tore up the flooring, tried to set a fire that the sprinklers caught." Nina pushed past her. The memorial room was devastation. Everything Margot had preserved, destroyed. But the dresses were already in police custody, the coordinates already recovered. This was just rage, desperation. "Graham Whitmore has an alibi," Harris said. "He was at a charity dinner with 200 witnesses. Then he hired someone." "We're investigating. But Nina," Harris paused, "maybe you should take that buyout offer, for your own safety." Nina looked at the destruction, at 40 years of work smashed in a single night. "No," she said, "I'm not selling." She called James Brennan from the ruined memorial room. I'm rejecting your offer. Tell Graham Whitmore he can't buy my silence. Brennan's voice went cold. You're making a grave mistake. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. She hung up, looked at Marcus, who'd arrived during the call. Now what? He asked. Now we finish what Margot started, all the way. Her phone buzzed, unknown number, another threat. But this one was different. A video, an elderly woman, bound to a chair, terrified. Nina's blood turned to ice. It was Helen Pritchard, the woman who'd witnessed Theodore Whitmore murder Diana Volkov 60 years ago. The woman who'd finally agreed to testify. The caption, last chance, sell the store and leave town, or watch people die. Nina sent Sophia away. Not to Denise's house, not to her friends, to her sister in California, 3 states away, with instructions not to tell anyone where she was going. Sophia cried at the bus station. Mom, I don't understand. What's happening? Nina knelt, held her daughter's face in her hands. Something bad happened a long time ago. I'm trying to make it right, but I need you safe while I do. Are you coming with me? Soon, baby, I promise. It was a lie. Nina didn't know if she'd survive what came next. She watched the bus pull away, her heart breaking into pieces. Then she went back to finish the fight. The police worked fast. Within 3 days, they'd excavated all 6 locations from the dress coordinates. 6 bodies, 6 women, all murdered between 1958 and 1971. The town erupted. National news descended. The story of the vintage store owner who'd uncovered a serial killer's burial ground spread like wildfire. Detective Harris called Nina into the station. We need to talk about Graham Whitmore. Nina's stomach dropped. Did you arrest him? We questioned him. He admitted his father owned the properties where we found the bodies. He even admitted visiting the sites occasionally. Then, is go, vide, and Tess. He says he went there to pray, to ask forgiveness for his father's sins. He claims he only learned about the murders after Theodore died in 2010, found his father's journal, and couldn't bring himself to reveal it because it would destroy the family name. Nina stared. You believe him? I believe we can't prove he knew about the murders while they were happening. He was a child for most of them. And the threats you've been receiving? We traced the phone. Burner, bought in Seattle. No connection to Graham. He hired someone. Possibly. But without proof, we can't charge him. Harris leaned forward. However, we did find something in Theodore Whitmore's journal. Something that changes everything. She slid a photograph across the table. A young woman, dark hair, elegant features, standing in front of the vintage store. Margot Delacroix, Nina whispered. 1965. Theodore Whitmore's journal has dozens of entries about her. He was obsessed with her, wanted her to be his. What's the word he used? His collection's curator. Nina's blood ran cold. Theodore Whitmore didn't just kill these women. Harris continued. He preserved them, kept their belongings, their clothing, documented everything about them. He saw himself as an artist. The women were his masterpieces. And Margot? He wanted her to help him, to organize his collection, preserve the clothing properly. He approached her in 1962, showed her what he'd done. Thought she'd understand the beauty of it. Nina thought she might be sick. Instead, Margot reported him, but Theodore was wealthy, connected. The police couldn't find evidence. No bodies, no proof, just a young woman's accusations against a respected businessman. So she spent 40 years trying to prove it. Harris nodded. Theodore's journal says he let her live because killing her would draw attention. Instead, he buried the bodies deeper, hid the evidence better. Let her investigate all she wanted, knowing she'd never find proof. But she did find it. Eventually, the The journal doesn't say how, but based on what we found, Margot must have gotten Theodore to confess the locations before he died. Maybe he was sick, dying, wanted someone to know the truth. And then Graham killed her to keep it buried. Harris's expression was carefully neutral. We're investigating that possibility. Margot's death was ruled natural causes, but we're exhuming her body, looking for evidence of foul play. Nina sat back, her mind reeling. Margot had lived with this knowledge for 40 years, had preserved the dresses like sacred objects, because they were all she had of the women she'd failed to save. The hidden room wasn't just a memorial. It was Margot's promise. I won't forget you. I'll bring you home. And she had, just not in her lifetime. There's something else, Harris said. We found the key you were looking for, what it opens. She produced a small evidence bag. Inside, a brass key identical to the one Nina had found. There's a safety deposit box at First National Bank, registered to Margot Delacroix. This key opens it. We obtained a warrant, opened it this morning. Nina's pulse quickened. What was inside? A letter, addressed to whoever finishes what I started. Harris pulled out a photocopy. Would you like to read it? Nina took it with shaking hands. To whoever finishes what I started. If you're reading this, it means I'm dead, and it means you found the coordinates I hid in the dresses. Thank you. Thank you for giving these women peace. I met Theodore Whitmore in 1962. He showed me his collection clothing from women he'd murdered, preserved with meticulous care. He thought I'd appreciate the artistry. Instead, I saw the evil. I reported him. No one believed me. A young woman against a powerful man. The story as old as time. So I spent my life documenting, investigating, waiting. I befriended the families of missing women. I bought their daughters' dresses, their wedding gowns, their most beautiful things. I preserved them like Theodore had, but with love instead of ownership. I became what he wanted me to be, a curator, but not for him, for them. Before he died, Theodore was dying of cancer, delirious with pain and morphine. He confessed everything to me. The locations, the murders, the sick pride he felt. He wanted me to know he'd won. That he'd gotten away with it. I wrote down every word, hid the locations where he'd never think to look in the very dresses I'd collected to honor his victims. I knew I was dying too. Cancer, like Theodore. The universe has a sense of irony. I wanted to reveal everything before I died. But Theodore's son threatened me, said if I exposed his father, he'd destroy my store, ruin my name, make sure these women stayed buried forever. I was a coward. I chose the store over the truth. But I left a trail, breadcrumbs for someone braver than me. You found them. You gave these women their names back, their dignity, their peace. The store is yours now, truly. Use it however you wish. But know that every dress in that building has a story. Some beautiful, some tragic. All of them deserving to be remembered. Thank you for remembering. Margot Delacroix. Nina read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Margot hadn't failed. She'd planned for this. Had faith that someday someone would care enough to look deeper. Someone would finish what she started. What happens now? Nina asked. Now we build a case against Graham Whitmore. If we can prove he threatened Margot, coerced her silence, we can charge him. And if the exhumation shows foul play... Harris paused. Justice might be slow, but it's coming. Nina left the station in a daze. She drove to the store, stood in the hidden room, and looked at the empty mannequins. The dresses were police evidence now, carefully preserved in a forensics lab. But the room felt different, not haunted anymore. Peaceful. Marcus found her there an hour later. The families want to meet you, he said gently. All 6, they want to say thank you. I didn't do anything. Margot did everything. You finished it. That's not nothing. Nina thought about Margot's letter. About 40 years of living with terrible knowledge, unable to speak it aloud. Marcus, your aunt, did you ever tell her you believed her, before she died? His face crumpled. No, I thought she was paranoid until it was too late. She knew you loved her. That matters more. They stood together in the empty memorial room, two people trying to honor a woman who'd spent her life honoring the dead. What will you do now? Marcus asked. Nina looked around the store, at the racks of vintage clothing, each piece with its own story. I'm going to reopen, she said. Like I planned, but half the store will be a museum. The Margot Delacroix Memorial. About her investigation, the women she saved, the truth she protected. And the other half, a boutique. Beautiful things deserve second chances. She smiled through tears. Margot taught me that. She gave these women a second chance at being remembered. Her phone rang. Sophia, calling from California. Mom, are you okay? Yeah, baby. I'm okay. We're all going to be okay now. Can I come home? Nina looked at the empty memorial room. Thought about the 6 families who'd finally have answers. About Margot's 40-year fight for justice. About the choice to be brave when it would be easier to look away. Yes, she said. Come home. It's safe now. And, for the first time since she'd bought this store, that felt like the truth. The arrest came 3 weeks later. Graham Whitmore, charged with obstruction of justice, coercion, and conspiracy to conceal evidence of murder. Margot's exhumation revealed traces of a sedative in her bone marrow. Not enough to kill her outright, but enough to trigger a fatal heart attack in someone with her health condition. Murder, disguised as natural causes. Graham's lawyer called it circumstantial. The prosecution called it justice. Nina watched the news from her store, surrounded by the wreckage of the memorial room she was slowly rebuilding. Detective Harris visited that afternoon. Thought you'd want to know. We found the person who sent the threatening texts, former employee of Whitmore Properties. He's cooperating, provided evidence Graham paid him to intimidate you. Will it be enough to convict? Harris smiled. Combined with Theodore's journal, Margot's toxicology, and testimony from the victims' families? Yes. Graham Whitmore is going to prison for a very long time. After she left, Nina sat in the memorial room, now just an empty space waiting to be reborn. Marcus found her there. The families are here, he said gently. Nina had been dreading this moment, wanting it, fearing it. 6 families, 11 people, daughters, sons, siblings, nieces, who'd spent decades wondering. They gathered in the store, among the vintage dresses that had held their secrets. Margaret Chen's sister spoke first, her voice trembling. Thank you, that's not enough, but it's all I have. Thank you for not giving up, for giving my sister a name again, a grave we can visit. One by one, they shared stories. Rose Martinez's daughter, now 70, who'd been told her mother abandoned her. Diana Volkov's niece, who'd grown up believing her aunt was ashamed of the family. Catherine Blackwood's sister, who'd always known her sister's fiancé was lying. Nina listened, tears streaming, as they transformed the women from photographs into people. Daughters who loved music, sisters who told jokes, women who dreamed of futures they never got to see. Margot knew all this, one of them said. She interviewed us decades ago, wrote down our memories. She said someone would need them someday. Of course she had. Margot had preserved more than dresses. She'd preserved love. After they left, Nina stood alone in the store, feeling the weight of what she'd inherited. Not just a building, a mission. Her phone rang. Sophia. Mom, can I really come home? Yes, baby. It's safe now, really safe. When? Tomorrow. Aunt Maria's putting you on the bus in the morning. Silence. Then. Mom? I'm proud of you. Nina's throat closed. Thank you, sweetheart. You did what Grandma always said. You stood up. The next 6 months, blurred together. The store reopened in stages. First, the boutique side carefully curated vintage clothing, each piece labelled with its history. Nina's seamstress skills brought damaged items back to life. The eviction notice disappeared. Turned out, with Graham Whitmore facing criminal charges, his property management company was being liquidated. The court appointed a new manager who offered Nina a 5-year lease at her current rate. Small miracles. But the real transformation was the memorial side. Nina worked with Marcus, the victims' families, and a museum consultant to create something Margot would have been proud of. The Margot Delacroix Memorial Museum opened on a crisp October morning, exactly 1 year after Nina had first discovered the hidden room. Half the store, beautifully lit, telling 6 stories. Each woman had a display. Their photograph, belongings returned by police, stories written by family members, and their dress preserved now not as evidence but as art. Margaret Chen in her blue silk, Rose Martinez in emerald green, Diana Volkov in midnight black, Catherine Blackwood in ivory lace, and 2 others whose stories could finally be told. At the centre, Margot's own photograph, not hidden anymore, but honoured. The plaque read, Margot Delacroix, 1937 to 2015. She never forgot. The opening drew hundreds. Press, families, local historians, true crime enthusiasts who'd followed the story. But it was the quiet visitors Nina noticed most. Young women who studied the displays with serious faces. Elderly women who cried and said, I knew one of them. And men who brought their daughters, teaching them about the importance of remembering. Sophia, now 11, worked the boutique counter on weekends. She'd started designing her own vintage-inspired pieces, sketching dresses with the same care Margot had once used to document coordinates. Mom, she said one Saturday afternoon, do you think Margot knew that you'd find everything? Nina looked at the memorial, at Margot's face watching over the women she'd protected. I think she hoped. That's all any of us can do. Hope that someone will care enough to look. That evening, after closing, Nina stood in the space between the boutique and the memorial. One side, beautiful things given second chances. The other, forgotten women given voice. It was exactly right. Marcus joined her, carrying a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. To Margot, he said. To Margot. They drank in comfortable silence. She'd be happy, I think, Marcus said. That it's not sad, that it celebrates them. She gave me more than a store, Nina said. She gave me purpose. You gave yourself that. She just left the door open. Nina smiled. Maybe, but I'm grateful I was brave enough to walk through it. Her phone buzzed. A message from Margaret Chen's sister. Visited Margaret's grave today. Told her about the museum. Thank you for making sure she's remembered. Nina showed Marcus. He raised his glass again. To the women who never came home. And to the woman who made sure they weren't forgotten. Outside, the store's sign glowed in the dusk. Nina had kept Margot's original design but added new words. Margot's legacy, where every story matters. It had cost everything Nina had, her savings, her security, nearly her daughter's safety. But standing here, in this space where justice had finally arrived, she couldn't imagine having made any other choice. Some things were worth more than money. Some stories deserved to be told. And some legacies were meant to be carried forward by hands, willing to do the work. Nina locked the door, turned off the lights, and went home to her daughter. Tomorrow, the work would continue. But tonight, she could rest. 3 years later, Nina stood in the memorial room, watching a young woman photograph Margaret Chen's display. The woman's grandmother had known Margaret, had wondered for 60 years what happened to her friend. Now she knew. Thank you for this, the woman said, wiping her eyes. Grandma passed last year. She never got to see it, but knowing Margaret was found, it gave her peace. After she left, Nina walked through the boutique side. Sophia was helping a customer, explaining the history of a 1,960 seconds cocktail dress with the same care Margot had once used. 15 now, tall, confident, kind. They'd made it. The store thrived. The museum had been featured in documentaries, true crime podcasts, history journals. People travelled from across the country to see it, but it was the local visitors Nina treasured most. Elderly women bringing their granddaughters, teachers bringing students, people who whispered, "I knew someone who disappeared. Thank you for remembering." Graham Whitmore was serving 18 years in federal prison. His appeals had all failed. The 6 women were buried together in a memorial garden, their names carved in stone. Margot's grave was there too, finally at peace. Marcus stopped by every Sunday, bringing flowers for the memorial. He'd written a book about his aunt, about her courage, her patience, her faith that truth would win. It was a bestseller. Nina had been offered money to sell her story, movie rights, book deals. She'd turned them all down. "This isn't about me," she always said. "It's about them." That evening, after closing, Nina did what she'd done every night for 3 years. She stood in the memorial room and looked at the photographs of 6 young women who never came home. "Thank you for trusting me with your stories," she whispered. Then she locked up, walked past the sign, "Where every story matters," and went home to her daughter. The store had cost her everything she had, but it gave her something worth more. A purpose, a mission, a reminder that ordinary people can change the world by simply refusing to look away. Nina Castillo had spent her last $8,500 on a vintage clothing store. What she discovered inside changed not just her life, but the lives of dozens of families who finally had answers. Some inheritances come with money. The best ones come with meaning. Sometimes, the most valuable thing you can buy is someone else's unfinished fight. Nina Torres bought a store full of secrets, but what she really inherited was a promise to remember, to seek justice, to give voice to the forgotten. What would you do if you stumbled upon buried truth? Would you look away or would you dig deeper? Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is finish what someone else started.